welcome to our podcast. We are facing so many transformative changes in the manufacturing industry that we need to talk to a futurist. And we are extremely honored and happy to talk today with Gerd Leonhard, who is not only a renowned futurist, but also an expert in the field of technology and society, and a thought leader for several topics, including digital ethics, human-centric technology, sustainability, and many, many more. Things that are important for the manufacturing industry as of today. Gerd, on top of that, is my favorite futurist because it's about 8 years ago in 2015 that he participated in a conference in Dresden where we talked about the future of mobility and also gas and oil industry. And he had so many insightful, directions and strategies that led to a lot of discussions with the senior folks that were there. Needless to say, everything that Gerd prognosed happened or is very visible that it will happen. So with that, I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, looking to find out what the manufacturing industry in Europe is going through the next several times. Let's talk on opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. And first of all, hello, Gerd. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Hannes. It's great to be here with you and also, of course, at the event very soon.
Yes, that's next week, Thursday, 1st of June, that we have our manufacturing day. There we will go into a variety of topics and also have technology startups that show their ingenious inventions. But before that, let's talk about the manufacturing sector in Europe. And we have seen it really undergo a lot of changes in the past 10 years, including Industry 4.0. Some are talking now about Industry 5.0, more human-centric manufacturing. And it has brought so many implications for the manufacturing industry, not just in Europe, but worldwide. And now you come and say, whatever you have seen in the past 10 years, the next 10 years will be even more change than the previous 100 years, driven by, the digital revolution, the sustainability revolution, purpose revolution. Can you elaborate a little bit on those revolutions and their impact, particularly in manufacturing?
Yes, well, we have three waves of three revolutions coming at the same time now, right? So first, the digital revolution, which includes, of course, artificial intelligence, a major discussion point right now. The second wave, the second revolution is the sustainability revolution. So that means everything has to become sustainable, circular, green, right? And that is 100 times of the digital revolution. And now it's actually possible to combine the digital and the green revolution and receive completely different results. And the third one is the purpose revolution, which is about a different goal of society to go beyond just GDP and profit and growth, to develop this kind of thing that Al Gore called the sustainable capitalism, right? And I think all three of those have great impact on manufacturing, because digital, of course, there's four pieces of digital. One is the technology revolution in biology. So that is synthetic biology, 3D printing, and so on and so on. And then there's the energy revolution, right? And then there's the information technology revolution and the AI revolution. And then if you take them together with sustainability, it means that we're going to see all these changes become possible that were essentially impossible just 10 years ago. For example, we're now capable of shifting to green energy completely, but it is a major effort that will impact pretty much every segment of society and production. And that's going to take a lot of political change as well. So that, I think, is mostly an opportunity. But for manufacturing, there are many, many trends happening at the same time, including, for example, automation, that are also significant cultural challenges. For example, should we have an automation tax? Are we going to see jobs changes where routines are being done by machines? And what does that mean for people? And so myriads of things there. In the end, I think by 2030, we're going to live in a completely different world already. that's on the way to becoming green again, so to speak, circular, sustainable, but also using technology to make everything more efficient, faster, more sustainable, and in the end, a different paradigm of doing business.
You touched a little bit on the changes of artificial intelligence, and with the recent changes, ChatGPT, one topic, but other AI tools, many people feel really scared of artificial intelligence, and even renowned experts, including but not limited to Elon Musk, are already warning about the potential threats and risks of artificial intelligence. Do we need to be afraid of artificial intelligence?
I think that there are reasons why we should be concerned about what it does and how it does it. But like every technology has the same problem. We have good things coming from technology, and then we have bad side effects. And with artificial intelligence, because it's exponentially larger than everything else, you could say in a way artificial intelligence is kind of like the printing press. We're now inventing something that's fundamentally different. And if we want to have good outcome, we need a bit more than just technology. We need to have wise policy, and we need to have guardrails, and we need to have collaboration, international collaboration. In this case, primarily Europe, US, and China, collaborating on having guidelines, because currently it isn't possible for intelligent machines to be more intelligent than we are. But this point isn't that far away. It's 5, 8, 10 years away. It's not 50 years away. And that opens up all issues of control, for example. In the meantime, intelligent machines are primarily providing what I call IA, intelligent assistance. And that's a very big deal for manufacturing, because basically anything that is a routine will eventually be done by intelligent software, intelligent machines. And I wouldn't call them intelligent in the human sense. They're much more intelligent in the machine, binary, simple sense. Like, for example, I can now have Gmail write my email. I can create marketing materials that are automated with a story by an artificial intelligent assistant. I can have digital twins in production, which is a very big topic, much easier because I have a lot more data, more visualization, more intelligence in the system. So basically what's happening is that everything that used to be stupid, so to speak, is becoming smart. And that's not really a threat. It could be a threat if we deal with it wrong. Right. So what we need to do is we need to proceed into investigating, but not be too ignorant about potential side effects. Right? For example, the issue of how we train our employees and how we create new jobs and how the social structure needs to adapt to create jobs that are fit for this kind of new economy. Right? So I would say, yes, it could be heaven or it could be hell. I think it can be heaven if we go about it wisely. It's a little bit like large inventions like nuclear energy, nuclear power were used to create hell. And then we found a way for it to not create hell, to agree. And it's going to be the similar way with AI. And I think what Elon Musk and the others have done about AI is the discussion to create a good framework that makes sure that we use it correctly. I think that is the most important learning from all the discussion, so that we don't just jump into something just because it looks interesting or, it can be done. We need to have more of a framework. And this is why I think the European Commission is doing a very good job at laying the groundwork for artificial intelligence to guide us into a future that is mutually beneficial, not just financially beneficial, but also beneficial for, for work and for jobs and for humanity.
So whether or not it's going to be a threat is in our hands, so to speak, and in the hands of the politicians.
Yes, I think primarily you could say that. I think the threat component is, when you think about it long term, is that we may develop something that we don't control anymore. That's probably the biggest threat, and that is currently not really a topic because ChatGPT and other bots like this are not going to control our flight schedules or our power grid, yet. But we can foresee the time to where they would manipulate us or manipulate humans to create things that we don't want, or where they would start distorting reality and basically taken over the story making. And eventually, I mean, you have to think about this like this. By 2030, we're probably going to have, 8 billion people connected on the internet. And if there's a machine that would understand 8 billion people and all of their data and everything they're thinking and creating, yes, that could be a threat. And that is something we have to think about. We're not there yet, but I think we're moving there pretty quickly.
That sounds very powerful. And you touched on the changing of the skill sets and future talents we need, and I will get back to that a little bit later. I want to stay for now still at the purpose revolution, because when I think back when I was 17 years old, my one goal was to own a car and get a car and tune it and work on it and you obviously drive with it. And now I have two sons, the age of 25 and 22, and they don't want to own a car. They are not interested in cars per se. Their biggest tool is an iPhone, where they order Uber if they want to go from A to B, where they order food that's delivered to them with very little effort and very little loss of time. And I see those cultural changes within my family. Now the question is, are those cultural changes for real, and are they sustainable, and will they lead to a situation where cars are not parked 99% of the time, but actually used most of the time because it's car sharing? Is that really a trend that you foresee?
Well, I think one thing is for certain that our generation is melting away financially and in terms of power. Gen X, baby boomers are declining in power, and millennials are coming in, Gen Y, and also, of course, the Gen Z, the zillennials, right? They're coming in, and the forecast is roughly by 2030, 56% of all major executive jobs and political functions will be handled by people that are currently between 28 and 40. So there's a huge shift of emphasis, yeah? And as we're fading out from the active part of society in the next decade or so, money is being transferred to the millennials and power, and that is going to mean that the values of millennials and Gen Y and Gen Z are going to take over, and the values of younger people, roughly 20 to 40 range, they are completely different. They want a world with purpose. They are global thinkers. Right? They are deep with technology and everything around it. Right? They think beyond money and just having fun, even though money is important for them as well. We can't ignore that. As far as driving is concerned and cars, it's a shift that we're seeing around the world, clearly happening. We're going from ownership to access. So I'll be able to access a car, and I think quite a few people will still want to own a car or co-own a car, but nobody in their right mind will buy a car with a gas engine. That's already happening around the world. It's quickly shifting away. By 2030, nobody will even think about buying a car that does not have an electric engine, except if they're a collector or or yeah, something like that. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that is a good thing also, because we have different possibilities there, and it's a generational shift that we've never seen before. I think in many ways I always say 2023 is kind of like 1968. 1968 to 73 was the last time we had this huge shift in society. I was 7 years old in '68, so I didn't really feel it then. But that was the last time we had a global shift, and now we have this global shift post COVID, hopefully post Ukraine, Russia, post the whole geopolitics are changing. So it's going to be a huge decade of marvelous changes that are also quite scary because they're so fast, right? So the way to deal with that is to not necessarily um, deal with it so much that we develop fear, but to be open for what it could mean. And to develop what I call the future mindset, which is to understand what's coming, to remove the fear factor, right, and use the benefits without using the side effects too much.
Interesting. Let's focus on Europe a little bit. And COVID showed us again many incidences before that could actually shown us the vulnerability that we have to our global supply chains. And, needless to say, one stuck ship in the Suez Channel is interrupting our product supply and is shutting down productions all over Europe. Now, we have seen because of that now a new trend of reshoring and nearshoring, a trend that is in Europe particularly in favor of those countries, Eastern European countries, where you still have advantages from a lower salary levels. Is this a trend that we are continue to see, that we are getting much more focused on controlling everything here in Europe rather than having products brought in from China, India, or any other place?
I think it's really both at the same time. I think we are developing systems that are more resilient, so we have backups, for example, so we don't rely on just one place to source things. We're also starting to measure if our suppliers are resilient themselves and if they are sustainable, if they're doing the right thing. So I think a lot of that is shifting. I also think that a lot of products that we are now shipping from India and China, they will in the future be produced locally because of automation and genetic engineering and nanotechnology, biotechnology, and 3D printing. So very soon, I can print my tennis shoes here. I don't have to ship them, and I can print even my electronics, to a large degree, or engine parts or any of those things. I think shipping will continue to be a major thing that happens for the next decade or so, but we have lots of environmental issues there as well. So I think that deglobalization is kind of overhyped because I see more diversification in supply chain. So we want to make sure it's working under all circumstances. So we have various backup plans and various options. The other thing that's happening is that we have global issues like water, food, and energy that we can't solve by ourselves, and that's forcing us to globalize. So, for example, we can't solve the energy problem or the climate change problem by ourselves. If Europe was completely net zero next year and green, it wouldn't help us because we have to get the Africans and the Brazilians and the Indians to come along. So these are global issues that we have to solve globally. That's forcing us to collaborate. On a global sort of economic level, I think we're going to be much wiser about sourcing and reducing the shipping that's required. For example, food will be produced locally much more again in vertical farming with cultured meat and things like that. So all that stuff is coming in the very near future. It'll be a mix, but I think by 2030 we should be more global in many ways, but also more resilient and more independent.
Interesting that you touched that because I was listening to Professor Ulrich van Zuntum. He's a former professor of the University of Münster. And he was talking about, if Europe tries to fix the climate crisis, then we are in a bad position because once our gas house emissions count for less than 10% worldwide as of now, that in the last 30 years, Europe has reduced it by one third. And at the same time, globally, it grew by two thirds. So that's a major issue. Also, because if we are increasing the standards that manufacturers has to undergo to manufacture here in Europe, we will see more and more companies leave their production plants in other regions of the world, and then with less standards and quote unquote better laws locally, they would probably produce even more pollution. So is this the right way? Is the Green Deal actually something good for the manufacturing sector in Europe, or should we scratch that and rethink that whole thing?
I think it is a good thing because in the end, global standards will prevail for a lot of manufacturing and factories, and of course, overall standards of how you do things. I think that the only solution to the climate change problem is global understanding of the goals, and that means we'll eventually have to end up paying for the other countries to come along. Like we have to give them the tech that is required to go sustainable. And I think we're going to see a global carbon tax in some way or the other that will be used to get those nations like Brazil and India and many African countries into the next standard of energy production and environmental protection. And that requires a global understanding of what the goal is. Yeah? And that again would mean that it doesn't really matter whether we have a temporary problem here. It matters if we have a long-term stability of how we source things and how we do things. For example, if we are able to have synthetic biology that creates materials that we use in mobile phones and electronics, then we don't need the mines anymore, not in the same way. Then we can use that technology to manufacture pretty much everywhere without a lot of chipping potential. Right? The same goes for vertical farming, which is super expensive. But in principle, we can have a vertical farm, a high rise in every village, somewhere that produces a local food for 100,000 people. Right? So if that's going to work, then I think all the geopolitics will change as well. And I think in the meantime, we should look in Europe to be a leader in sustainability because that is the position that we can have. Europe is not going to be a leader in artificial intelligence. We're not going to be a leader in technology innovation. That's America and China. Uh, Most people from Europe end up going to those places eventually, if they are good at what they do. We can be, and I think we already are, the leader in sustainability, and we can teach that to other countries, and we can also try to impact their policies. So I think overall it's a great opportunity. Are we going to have problems being competitive? That may be the case at times. And sometimes we have to find exceptions and ways out of regulation that allow us to prosper. But generally speaking, I think we're on the right track here because the global view is what really matters. It may take a little bit longer than we had thought, but overall, I think it's a good thing.
As you mentioned, there are several industrial economies in Europe, and Sweden might be one particularly to mention, that are politically driving towards net zero emissions and therefore developing net zero technologies, but with the objective and the aim to actually develop those technologies and then export them and then do something for their economy. Is that a game that's going to be won by those countries, or are they not thinking about what could happen on that way that will not allow them to be actually benefiting from that kind of development?
Well, this is a complicated scenario, but I foresee that countries like South Africa, for example, that are depending on coal for energy, like 76% of South Africa is running on coal, right, that are going to be targeted for international measures to not do business there if they don't change what they're doing. And that's already a debate, for example, in Brazil with the Amazon. And we're going to see global policy being enacted there. I think in the end, if you imagine that the next 1,000 unicorns, billion-dollar companies, they will all be in climate change technology. Because, that's where the money is going. That's what people want. That's what policy wants. That's what science makes possible. And if all the money is going on that sector, I think Europe will be pretty well advised to also invest and export that knowledge and technology, because there we have a lead and we can use technology in many different ways. For example, the integrate and battery technology and urban farming and all of these things that we're working on. I think that is a very good decision to put money there and to spot the Green Deal and to export that rather than to import the kind of idea that we should ignore environmental circumstances because it's a short-term relief, that we don't have to pay XYZ tax or, I think that won't work. Um, because in the end, if we do that, that would open the floodgates to pretty much any behavior, like the airline industry, is talking about that it can't fly without using regular, it's less than 1% is the sustainable airline fuel. And that is not an argument as to why we should not try to replace it. That's if we take those excuses, we'll find one everywhere. I think what we need to do is to collaborate and to export technology and to work together to create goals that are binding. And also, for example, in manufacturing, I think we need to start paying what it actually costs. So if the costs are higher, because we've gotten used to very cheap consumer goods, but also, meat and food, for example, right? Um, then maybe the time has come for us to pay the higher price as to what it actually costs, right? And that is a discussion that I think is a political discussion, and of course, to protect people who are not well off, we need to also make sure the markets are working. So these are complicated things, but I foresee that many countries are not going along with the sustainable agenda, will be punished internationally by all kinds of provisions and trade agreements and so on, like South Africa is about to be, and so on, to actually come along on that agenda.
Staying on the topic for a second, in the Net Zero Act, I think hydrogen is now playing a bigger and bigger role, and similar to ChatGTP, hydrogen is now en vogue. Everybody's talking about hydrogen production, hydrogen transportation, hydrogen usage. I myself had contact with hydrogen already in the 1990s. It took a long time to develop the technologies, and now there is actually a focus on it. So the question is, could hydrogen be a game changer for abandoning fossil fuels? And what would it need for this transition? And even more important, how long will it take?
Well, I mean, the future of energy clearly is not like making one choice and pursuing that, but it's all of the above and then some new ones. That's the answer, right? So basically, if we're looking how we get energy and how we drive and how we fly and so on, it is going to always be a mix of solar, of wind, of next generation nuclear fusion, hydrogen, pretty much anything that we can think of to change existing processes. And until we have nuclear fusion, which is the idea of having nuclear power that's completely clean, we are going to be forced to look at every possible direction to reduce waste and pollution and to change the way that we use fuels. And that is going to be the answer. I think hydrogen is the great answer for buses and trucks and maybe even ships, not for airplanes, because of various of the properties of the chemical, like ammonia, same thing. I think everybody in the airline business will tell you that, that is just not going to happen, that we have sustainable airline fuel in the decade or so. We need to find other ways of solving the problem. For example, as happened in France right now, to say short distances have to be done by train. That's a policy question, and yes, it's a pain, and nobody likes the government mingling with all private choices. But this is part of the discussion that we have to face in the future. And I think ultimately, I always say the future is better than we think, because when you think about what's going to happen with 10 billion people by 2030, there'll be new opportunities for new products, whether digital and physical. There'll be new collaboration technologies, new ideas, new inventions. I mean, the invention curve is going like this, right? It's exploding. Everything that we're inventing, especially around all the difficult things that we need to solve. So that gives me great confidence to say if we have the right policy and we can collaborate, we should be able to solve most of our practical problems.
Very good. I'm jumping back a little bit, talking about the new skills that we will need for this transition in manufacturing. Probably adding to the tremendous labor shortage that we are seeing already today. We have, war for talent is in everybody's mouth. I have seen prognosis here in Austria from the Industriellenvereinigung, where they are foreseeing that at least a third of the workforce will be missing in 2035. And we have no real strategies in place yet to make sure that this is not going to happen. Can the technological advances that we are making with all the new technologies, including but not limited to AI, that are actually causing that kind of problem, be also the solver of or solution of that problem?
I think it may very well be that some of the jobs become so efficient using technology that people who work the job can suddenly do many other things also. Like, the forecast with AI is that it's not just about blue collar workers anymore. It's about white collar workers and knowledge workers, right? If I can work 4 or 5 times as fast because I have an AI assistant, then I can start doing other jobs. However, we should not be too overly optimistic on automating everything, because we always find out that if we want to automate things, it turns out there are many things that are human only jobs. Like driving is one of those. We're not going to have truck drivers everywhere, replaced by machines driving trucks anytime soon, because yes, a machine can drive a truck, but when it gets off the highway, it can't. it needs a human, right? And so we have all of these things where we think we can automate, but in the end, we still need the human. So the labor shortage, I think, will be partly done through also outsourcing in a virtual world. So we're going to have more people working virtually and remotely from all over the planet at competitive rates. And we're going to need a global workforce regulation on this. What do they get on social security? So it can't be like, the sort of freelance economy that we have now. It has to be a bit more organized than that. And by developing better education programs so that our students and our young people are capable of switching. Because, here's the thing Alvin Toffler said many times, famous futurist, what we have to do for the future of jobs and learning is we have to know how to unlearn and to relearn and start again. So even when you're 50 years old, you're going to continue training and you're going to have a new job. Right? And we have to be more flexible. I think, especially in Europe, we have this problem that we think of a job, we learn and then we do the same job until we're 65, and that's just not going to happen. So we need to be able to relearn and to retrain. The labor shortage is a problem, but I think it's not very long term. Because if we have better skills and better automation and better machines and better assistants, we can do more work and hopefully we can generate enough money for the entire system for everybody.
At the end, and as a last question to you, we at EIT Manufacturing, we are a European network. We are supporting innovation in manufacturing through different routes. If you could give us one guidance, one focus, one thing that you say we should do in order to be, as successful in our vision and mission as we can be, what would that be?
Well, I would say there would be two things. First, I think we should use intelligent assistance, IA, as widely as possible to make processes more efficient, more intelligent, and basically smart everything. And I call it IA because it's not really AI. It's not thinking. It's not reasoning. It's not doing any. It's just better software, right? And so we can avoid pollution. We can avoid externalities. We can save money. We can upgrade our people. We can get more work done with the same amount of people. That's all part of better technology, right? The second one is we should go green all the way because it's going to happen much quicker than we think. This idea of saying that it will be net zero by 2035 or so, that's just going to be way too late. And we are seeing massive pressure as soon as Ukraine Russia situation is resolved in the way of some sort of compromise, maybe a fake compromise, but I think that will happen this year somehow. This issue is going to explode in policy, and there's a ground movement from millennials who want this badly. There's many young people who will not work for a company that's not going to be sustainable. So those two things, that's the ticket to the future. I always say big blue, tech, and big green. That's kind of the future for us, and that's the opportunity for us. And also to think about, we need to think about manufacturing and all of the processes as something that is in windows. Today the window may be like this, and in 10 years the window is different. And it has never been like this. We've always kind of just improved things, but we have to learn how to switch windows. For example, the car industry is going from owning a car to sharing a car and to access and to mobility, and we have to learn how to switch and be agile. That's the most important part because products will always be produced and always will be shipped, and we're always going to there's no end of that. We just have to be resilient and agile to switch as times are switching.
So to support our partners and our network and our stakeholders in becoming more agile and focusing on the Green Deal and using all the technology that's possible, that is, the center of what we are trying to do and we are continue trying to do. Thank you so much, Gerd. It was really a pleasure talking to you. I'm looking so much forward to have you join us physically here in Vienna on the 1st of June, next week, Thursday. And for everybody who wants to, see you, talk to you on that day, come join us here at Vienna Seestadt. We are looking forward to our Manufacturing Day 2023. Again, Gerd, thank you so much, and safe travel.
Thanks, Hannes, and I'll see you soon.